Hey, well, eventually id Software got infected by snakes in the grass and problem situations, and I left. id Software eventually recovered. It's a much different company now than it was back when I was there. Eventually I left id Software and I found a new home at Ensemble Studios. The difference between id Software and Ensemble Studios is best explained by the fact that every company has its own distinctive personality. This is especially true of a game company because they're small and they're mostly run by amateurs who haven't really done it before, and so they have very, very different personalities. Working at id Software was a lot like watching a nature documentary of a bunch of hyenas eating the carcass of a zebra. You see that they're barking, they're growling at each other, they're snapping at each other, and it's but the zebra carcass disappears pretty fast, so it's a pretty effective process. It's just not very fun to watch. That's what it was like at id Software. There's always the time that one of the guys would say, "You guys are bad, I don't like you," but things would keep going, and it kind of worked and it was successful, but it wasn't always very fun. Now, Ensemble Studios, on the other hand, was a lot like a band of brothers. Everyone hung out together. We all liked each other. We liked spending time together. One of the rules we had on hiring new people is that you had to be someone that if the elevator failed and we were stuck in the elevator with you for 3 hours, it would be entertaining. We talked to each other and had things to do. So we all pretty much liked everyone else at Ensemble Studios. So that was the difference in appearance. I'm not saying we were more efficient than id or more effective at good games, but it was a more pleasant place to be. Again, let me say that the modern id Software is not like the one I was in. Okay, it's much different. I have talked to people that work there. I know them. It seems to be a much more pleasant place. Well, Ensemble Studios did the Age of Empires series, which became pretty blockbuster real-time strategy games. We published these games for Microsoft, and they were extremely successful. In fact, they were their number one success of games. And Microsoft, instead of being grateful and happy about this, seemed put off by it. Like they would come by to sign our next deal and they would say, well, really, it's our marketing that does your games, and that's why it sells. It's all us. And we would say, then why don't you market your other games too, if it's all you? And we actually put together a presentation for them. We said, look, here's the sales of all your games put together except for the Age of Empires series. And here's the Age of Empires series. You notice that it sells more than every other game put together, except for Flight Simulator. Flight Simulator did great, but we literally outsold all their non-Flight Simulator games, and that just got their goat. We'd be walking around in Redmond in the Microsoft headquarters, and people would stop us and say, like their marketing guys, like, why is Ensemble Studios going so good? Almost as though they resented it, because they knew something was wrong. And the fact is that their ads were absolutely terrible. We were constantly fighting for a better box cover for our games. All the box covers were like 2 heads or three heads sitting there kind of inertly and statically. We couldn't get good advertising. We only sold because we were a great game. Now, I'm not saying that Microsoft was all bad. They did learn from mistakes. That was kind of their feature, ability to learn from mistakes. And also, they gave us so much money when they eventually bought us. But we'll talk about how they came to buy us. So what happened is that Microsoft is so big, there's separate little groups within it that are essentially insulated from each other, and they have separate goals, and they're working for different things. Ideally, it's all for the greater good, but it really wasn't. So the guys that were assigned to do the contract with us, the contract writing guys, they got rewarded by their boss if they gave us at Ensemble Studios the suckiest contract possible that was only good for them. So that's what they wanted, to give us a bad contract. Now, we knew we were super valuable and that we were worth a good contract. Now, there's also the separate group within Microsoft that were rewarded for having our games sell well. And they loved us, right? So the contract guys, basically we said, we are doing better than all your other game groups, so we should get more money. And they said, no, you have to get less money because it's all our marketing. And we said, it's not your marketing because otherwise you do that with everyone else. And then basically they refused to improve the contract because that wouldn't give the contract guys the bonuses they wanted. So and this is when we're working on the game that was Age 2, The Age of Kings, the biggest hit ever for Ensemble. And we just stopped work. We said, okay, well, we won't work with you then if you won't give us a good contract. We stopped and we started shopping around looking for other publishers. And so at this point, the guys who published us freaked out. And they went right to the top and they said, we can't lose Ensemble Studios. It is like 60% of all our game sales. We have to have them. And so the way they bypassed the evil contract guys was they talked Microsoft into entirely buying us. That way we didn't have to have a contract. We were employed by them. So, I mean, they had to make a deal for the buy-in, but that was different. So we got bought. And Ensemble Studios went from being a vendor for Microsoft to being a wholly owned subsidiary. Now, Microsoft, like I said, isn't dumb. They're able to learn from their mistakes. And so here's one thing they did. When they first bought, this time they were going around buying smaller companies. We kind of thought that would be what they might do to us. So they bought FASA Interactive. And what they did was they took FASA from its home in, I think, Chicago and moved them to Redmond. And they basically broke up the teams and spread it around the buildings and had them everywhere. And so, of course, what happened is that FASA was destroyed and it never did anything together as FASA. They just had license and they'd essentially taken the golden goose and cut it up into bits and then, hey, no more eggs. So they said, oh, that didn't work. So then they bought Bungie. So they buy Bungie and they move Bungie to Redmond. But this time they learned a little bit. So when they took Bungie to Redmond, they gave them their own separate building, basically their own hall, and they said, you guys stay in here and work together as part of our campus. And Bungie took, I think, 6 months before they were back on their feet, able to do stuff. I mean, not everyone wanted to leave when they were bought, and the other ones, but eventually it worked out and they started doing things again. And, but there was that 6-month break. So when they bought us, they were like one step higher on the sentience level. And they said, okay, we're going to buy Ensemble and we're going to leave them in Texas and we're not going to touch them. We're going to do whatever they want. We're going to switch them over to Microsoft payroll. And that's it. Let them keep doing what they do, and we will profit off them. And of course, the reward they got from that was Age of Empires 2, The Age of Kings, and then later the expansion, The Conquerors, which made were some of the biggest selling games of all time, and that was a huge, huge hit. Now, we were really successful working under Microsoft. I don't bear them ill will at this time. And, but we always, one of the things we did, when you have a company, a game company especially, most gamers like a lot of different kind of games. And if you have a game company, you're doing one game for 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row. After you finish with it, you kind of want to try something new. For example, when I worked on id Software, first-person shooter, they always wanted, believe it or not, they always wanted the next game to be a flight sim when I was there. They had all these ideas for a flight sim, and they kept moving, and they never did it. They just always did first-person shooters. Well, when I was at Ensemble Studios, they always wanted to have our next game be a first-person shooter. Okay, so they're like, we should do a shooter. Let's do a shooter. And, but they never did. We kept just doing the same game again because that's life in the big city. You just do what you're told to do by the boss. But we really wanted to do something cool. Now, by this time, Halo had come out. And so we didn't want to do a shooter anymore because Halo was really all the shooter Microsoft needed. I mean, Halo was a fantabulous game. But there was something else we liked that we wanted. And this is what led to the downfall of Ensemble Studios, which I'll get to in my next video in a couple weeks.